Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something quite personal. We're diving into the book Hannah's Heartbeat by Tasha Holbert and Richard L. Holbert.
Yes, and our goal here really is to kind of unpack their journey through pregnancy loss, but also focus on, the healing they found.
Exactly. We want to pull out those key insights, the messages of hope from the book, hoping it offers some understanding, maybe some solace for you listening.
And it's such an intimate look, isn't it? The book comes directly from their own deeply personal experience.
It really does. It's not just a story, though. It's filled with reflections, prayers, even practical resources for dealing with grief.
All woven together. So where does it start? It begins with that feeling of, pure joy.
Right, back in the fall of 2018 when Tasha and Richard found out they were expecting.
They call it a joy burst. That phrase really captures it, doesn't it?
It does, like a gift straight from heaven.
Yes.
Anyone who's had that news knows that feeling, that instant hope.
And that hope, it sort of crystallized, became more real with the first ultrasound.
Ah, yes. Hearing that heartbeat for the first time.
Thump, thump, thump. They describe it as a symphony of life, a melody of promise.
Beautiful words. And for them, and maybe for you listening, that sound is it's tangible proof. It makes everything real.
A sacred echo, as they put it. It confirms this new reality you're stepping into.
It became so foundational for them. But, things didn't quite stay on that joyful path.
No. As the pregnancy went on, some worrying signs started to appear.
They talk about experiencing sharp pains and then bleeding.
And the tests, the numbers, they weren't progressing. Stagnant numbers, they said.
You can just imagine that feeling. They call it a fragile dance between hope and uncertainty.
Walking that emotional tightrope, holding on to hope while this worry just keeps growing.
And that led them to another ultrasound.
Right, and this one was completely different from the first.
Just the opposite. This time, no sound.
That silence, after hearing that vibrant thump, thump, thump before, it must have been just deafening.
Absolutely crushing. And then the doctor's words.
Yeah. I'm sorry, your ultrasound is covered in blood. You lost the baby.
Wow. The contrast between those two moments, the joy, the sound, and then this silence and sorrow, it just hits you.
It really highlights the depth of their heartbreak.
And the book, it doesn't turn away from the difficult parts that followed. They're very open about the physical experience, too.
They share the experience of passing the baby at home, which sounds incredibly difficult, both physically and emotionally.
Intense pain, the trauma of it all.
And they even describe, very bravely, the visual of tissue and particles from our baby.
And that awful moment of saying goodbye, the flushing, it gives you a real sense of the raw, physical weight of the loss.
Things that often just aren't talked about. But the book doesn't stay there in that raw pain.
No, it moves towards healing. It explores how they found strength, how they started that long journey afterwards.
And a huge part of that, a real anchor for them, was their faith.
Seeking God's presence, finding comfort there.
Absolutely. They see it as just fundamental during that unimaginable grief. They even share a specific practice.
Right, the in his presence exercise. Can you tell us a bit of that? How might something like that help someone listening?
Well, it's quite structured, actually. It involves things like finding a quiet space, consciously closing your eyes, inviting God in, focusing on gratitude, even small things.
Okay.
Then releasing burdens, visualizing him, talking openly, sharing your thoughts, maybe journaling. It gives you a tangible way to process and connect.
So even just taking a moment, closing your eyes, inviting peace, that could be a starting point.
Exactly. A small step when things feel overwhelming.
The book also talks about teleo, that's T-E-L-E-O, right? Greek for it is finished. How does that idea help?
It's interesting. It's not about just giving up. It's more about finding a different kind of meaning. The idea is that even Hannah's life, as short and as painful as its loss was, had a completion, a purpose within a bigger picture. It offers a path towards peace, maybe acceptance, rather than just being stuck in the pain.
Like finding some sense of conclusion, even in grief.
Kind of. They draw a parallel with King David in the Bible, who also lost a child, but found a way to sort of move forward with meaning.
That's a powerful way to frame it. And they don't just focus inward, they also talk about the relationship, the marriage itself.
Oh, that's crucial. There's a chapter called The Miscarriage is Not the Marriage.
Such a direct title.
It really is. And it stresses how vital it is to protect that bond when you're both going through such intense individual pain, but also shared heartache.
Yeah, because grief hits people differently, even within the same couple. You have to be intentional about supporting each other.
Exactly. And they also tackle the silence that often surrounds miscarriage.
The elephant in the room, they call it.
That tendency in society to just not talk about it or minimize the grief, the book really pushes back against that.
It encourages you, the reader, to break that silence, be open about the loss.
Which is so important. And Richard's perspective, the father's voice, is really prominent too.
Yes, I thought that was so valuable. Often the focus is so much on the mother.
Right. And he shares his experience in chapters like A Father's Silent Funeral Saying Goodbye in the Bathroom.
Wow.
And another called Man to Man, Man Down. It gives you this often unseen view of how men might grieve, and it challenges that old idea that being strong means being silent.
It really does push against that stoicism, doesn't it? Showing that vulnerability is okay, necessary even.
Absolutely. It highlights that grief looks different for everyone, and we need space for all of it.
But amidst all this pain, there's also a clear message of hope threaded through the book.
Yes, definitely. They talk about weeping eventually turning into joy, about finding beauty for ashes.
Through God's grace, as they describe it.
And even the name they chose, Hannah, which means grace, becomes really significant in their story.
It all connects back. The book also includes something from the very beginning of the journey, doesn't it?
It does. The pregnancy prayer of protection.
Which really shows you that initial hope, that faith they had right from the start.
It's quite moving to read that, knowing what comes later. It captures that feeling of anticipation, of entrusting this new life to something bigger.
A feeling so many parents can relate to. And then, towards the end, there's a very personal piece.
Mommy's special excerpt for Hannah.
Yeah. What's the essence of that?
It's Tasha speaking directly to Hannah. She emphasizes that Hannah's life, no matter how brief it was, mattered deeply.
That it had significance.
Yes, and that there's a plan for their healing, for their restoration as parents. Kind of brings it full circle, reinforcing that Hannah's heartbeat, that initial symbol, continues as an echo of love and grace in their lives.
A beautiful, powerful way to think about it. That love doesn't end with loss.
Not at all.
Now, if you listening are going through loss, or maybe dealing with other stresses and looking for ways to cope, Tasha Poster Holbert, who's also a choreographer, does offer support. Hannah's Heartbeat. It's more than just one family's story.
Oh, much more. It gently explores these huge themes: hope, healing, faith, love in the face of something incredibly difficult. It invites you to think about these things in your own life, whatever you might be facing.
A really moving book, and hopefully this deep dive is giving you a sense of its message, that message of hope and the possibility of healing.